Good morning. Welcome to today's class. My name is Jon Witt and this is my son Noah. So today's class is a Hatha yoga class, so it's a base level class to give you a good foundation. Focus will be on balancing, a bit of side bending, more neutral spine. So these Saturday classes I've been focusing more on just back care. So if someone had acute back pain, good class to have. You could always use a chair if standing too long becomes too difficult for you. And you could always send me a message in terms of practice. If you sent me a video on something, it's much easier to help correct things and to help give you some tips. I can give you general advice, but if you sent me a video, it's much easier to help you. So I'm going to start in a standing position, and by standing, I'm just going to have my feet a little bit wider than, say, my hips, and I'm just going to be playing around with the weight in my feet. So I'm bringing the weight into my toes, into my heels, back into the toes, back into the heels. Just shift the weight all the way into the left foot, which is the beginning of balancing, and then shifting the weight into the right foot, and then again, just kind of see where you hold your weight. And then bring it back into the middle and just lift your right heel up off the floor. So you're basically shifting the weight into the left foot. So think of a straight line from your ankle to your hip to your shoulder. And then slowly bring the right heel down and shift the weight into the right foot. And then by lifting the left heel, really forces the weight into one side. So often people, when they stand, they don't necessarily know that they're leaning to one side. And then the joint can be problematic on that side. But it can also affect the spine, either the right or the left, depending on how your pelvis is sitting in space. So I'm going to come back into the middle, and then when I come back in the middle, I'm just going to lift my toes off the floor, all 10 toes off the floor, and then I'm going to lower the toes, and then lifting the toes, and then lowering, and I'm going to roll out into the right side of my foot. So hopefully you'll never ever roll an ankle, but if you practice these things, it helps prepare the joint so that you don't do this. So I'm going to roll into the left side. So if my foot was really, really tight, not very supple, it's very hard to balance on it. So I'm going to roll back over into the right side. That's good. And then back into the left. Fantastic. And then coming back into the middle, and I'm going to hook my thumbs behind me. I'm going to broaden my shoulders. Now, with your hands, just think of moving the tailbone down. So often people need more tailbone down. There's rare exceptions, but especially for like women, you're weak in your abdomen, you notice it's going to put you more in an anterior tilt. So I'm in a posterior tilt, and then I'm going to lift up onto the toes. And it's good to practice both. We'll practice a little bit more of moving the pelvis, but then as you're up on the toes, just feel if you're leaning into that one foot. Let's say one foot starts to get really tired. That might be the fact that you're in that foot too much. And then I'm going to lower the heels, and I'm going to take the arms forward. Just to counterbalance, I'm going to stick my butt out, my tailbone down. I'm just in a somewhat of a 90-degree squat. And then I'm going to bring it back up. And then I'm going to slowly lower. Now, maybe a partial bend in the knee is better than a full deep squat. Not that a deep squat is obviously bad. Then bring it back up. And then last time, you're going to bend the knees, and you're going to sit back with the hips. And maybe you're not doing this. And that's the great thing about training online is you can, make it easier, make it more progressive. And then bringing yourself back up. And then what you'll do is you're just going to take the left foot up off the floor. And then with the left foot up off the floor, try to pull the left leg up into the chest. So the left leg is pulling up and in. And it's not bad to obviously support yourself with the wall. And then I'm going to use the hands. And then as I use the hands, I'm increasing the stretch within my hip flexion. So if you're heavily relying on your hands, it's okay. But try to use more of the strength in your hip. And take the left leg out to the left. And find the angle that you're lacking strength, or you're lacking flexibility in the pelvis. And then you're going to bring it forward and bringing the left foot down, and then taking the right leg up And when you take the right leg up, common, it's not terrible, but people will lean back to take the leg up higher, right? But you want to keep the upper body over the pelvis. Take it out to the right side, and then as you take it out to the right, think that the knee is lifting towards the shoulder. Just something really, again, very basic. And then bring it back into the middle, and then as you bring it back into the middle, again, you could use your hands, and then bringing that right foot down. So just a basic side bend is you're going to go over to the left side, and then as you're off to the left, the whole right side is, being more exposed here. Again, play around with the tailbone moving down and the pubic bone moving up, and bring it up, and then side bend to the right, and then as you side bend to the right, you're elongating the left side. So this could be done passively, like just completely passive, but it could also be that you're actively working for, a better position. I think both are really, really useful. So if I'm a person that's always pushing, it's good to do passively, and then you're bringing yourself back up. Bye-bye. See you later. And then as you're just standing here, I'm just going to move the pelvis a little bit. I'm going to move the pelvis in a circular motion. So getting the pelvis to move. I know these look strange, but over time, it'll help with, think of like being able to move more, I guess, diversely. So if you don't really walk very smoothly, obviously that's okay. But getting the pelvis to be a bit softer will start to help. And I'm going to do a bigger position, but if there's a lot of tightness in the hips, and it's much easier to do if the pelvis is softer and more relaxed. So take the feet out a little bit wider than, say, the shoulders, and turn the feet out. And then with the feet out, you can take the arms out wide. I'm going to turn my thumbs up just so that you can see this better, but I'm going to bend my knees just a bit, and a small bend in the legs will strengthen the legs, definitely strengthen the legs, but it also won't put as much stress on the knee. So if you're a person that can't really bend your knees very much, perfectly fine, right? A small bend is really like the beginning of getting the legs to be stronger. And then as the legs get stronger and the tissue improves around the knee, then certainly we can sit lower. Not that you have to sit as low as I am, but you're actively pushing the thighs apart. And if you're tiring out, often is not really focusing enough on your breathing. I'm talking, so it's a little bit easier for me, so it forces me to breathe. You could do the same if you're practicing with someone. So I'm pushing the thighs again apart, and you can play around with sitting lower. I just wouldn't get, into the effect of getting like more bone on bone, like that can be the effect. So bring yourself up, and then as you come up, you can bring the arms down and just turn the left foot in and turn the right foot out. And I'm going to go out to the right side for a triangle. So I'm going to reach out to the right, and then when I go out to the right, especially if you're a person that doesn't love side bends, know that you could do it with a bent knee. Side angle pose is a bent knee position. Triangle pose is a straight leg position. They're both valuable. It's just when someone has a lot of stuff going on, you're probably going to want to make it easier for yourself. So I'm taking the left arm up. Classic approach is such. I'm going to turn the palm towards my face, and I'm going to keep that. So what I'm focusing more on here is getting more articulation into my shoulder. Not so much my elbow, not so much my wrist. And then as time goes on, you can certainly straighten the leg out more. It's not necessarily better. And I'm going to bring myself back up. I'm going to turn the right foot in and turning the left foot out to the left. And then as I turn my left foot out to the left, I'm going to reach out to the left. As I grab out or reach out to the left, I'm going to take the right arm up to the ceiling, and then I'm going to turn the palm. So just when you're turning your hand, notice if you're moving more from your hand or from the elbow. The hand is a reference, but if I only turn from the hand or the elbow, there can be pain involved. Not that that's such a bad thing, right? But I'm rotating more and more from my shoulder. And you could be looking down. You know, the abdomen is moving in, the ribs are moving in. So take one more deep breath here, and then bringing yourself back up. And then as you come back up, you can turn the left foot in, and then just stepping the feet back into a neutral stance. So back into neutral, I'm going to play a little bit around with the pelvis, which I've used in previous classes. But something you want to keep in mind is like, take note of which posterior tilt is tailbone down. If that's irritating your back, you might want to stay in anterior pelvis. So if you have stenosis and herniation, it's complicated. But if you tread lightly, I really believe that you can start to support yourself better, right? So my hands are on my hips just so that you can see me better. As I'm just going to be moving the tailbone down and then sticking my butt out and then moving it down. I know these look strange, but it'll really help with the way that you stand and the way that you walk. You know, there's nothing wrong with getting older, right? That's inevitable, but you should still be thriving, you know. Maybe when we get to an extended age, you know, we'll all be more limited, but it shouldn't, you know, you should be, in my opinion, not really struggling physically. You know, I think this is something that can be dramatically improved. So I'm sticking my butt out, and then I'm moving my tailbone down, strengthening my glutes. These are really, really weak for people. And then sticking the butt out again, and then bringing the tailbone down. So again, if you're getting tired from standing, you could come into a chair and you know, you could be sitting. You could do some twisting or side bending in a chair, which I've used in previous classes. But I'm going to go back to standing again. So when I'm standing on my right foot, I'm just going to do a circular motion with my left foot. So I'm just, and this is basic internal and external rotation. So the foot's moving out, and your right hip might start to burn from something like this. And then you can bring the left foot down, and then I'm going to go over to the right side. So I'm just circling the foot out, but really I'm exaggerating it. So I'm rotating in, and I'm rotating out initially when I take it out, and then you can see how I'm rotating in. So being able to do that, I think, is you're moving your thigh bones, and that's essentially what's going to help lubricate the joint. And then you're going to bring the right foot down. So I'm going to do that again, but more of a figure eight. So just kind of stay relaxed. It may not be a figure eight yet, and that's okay. But just letting the hip, the leg that we're lifting, let it relax in space. So I'm moving it in a figure eight way. And the more you move the leg, the more you'll be off balance. So that can be really beneficial. You know, you could use your arms to balance yourself, but I'm focusing on, you know, surprisingly, I'm focusing more on strengthening my right leg. So I'm a right-handed person, so you'll notice that your left leg is stronger if that's the case, right? And then bringing the left foot down, and then I'm going to circle my right foot in a circular motion, just getting the foot to circle around. And then as I circle my leg around in a figure eight configuration, you'll again notice that the left leg is really what's getting stronger. The foot, the outside of the hip. So some people can't really squat. You can't get into low squats because of knees and hips. You can still strengthen your hips by focusing more on your balance, which I think is a great outlet. So just have the hands beside you again. Side bend to the right side. Just get all this great space through the left. You know, more isn't always better. You know, let's say you're a person that really pushes in yoga. You're probably pushing too much. You could do it like more relaxed. some people would say, well, why don't you go further? And that's not necessarily important. So bring yourself up and then side bend to the left. Pubic bone is up, tailbone is down. So in yoga, it's really, or just in advertising, right? I guess it's more appealing when someone's doing more dynamic or dramatic positions, but you don't necessarily have to go into really deep positions to really benefit. And then I'm coming back up, and then when I come back up, I'm going to take my feet out wide again. And with my feet out wide, I'm going to turn my feet out. I'm going to bend the knees. I'm going to take the arms out. And this is, some yoga techniques have been adopted from many different forms of physical culture. So this isn't a yoga pose, but it's more in the lines of martial arts. But it's a very good way to strengthen the legs. Say you lack discipline, do this a few times or more throughout the day, for a time that really challenges you, and that'll get you into practicing more on your own. So my tailbone's down and my pubic bone's up. If I'm sticking my butt out, you might be able to hang out here longer, but you want to get your hips underneath you to help support your spine and especially your lower back. And then bring it back up, and then when you come back up, just step the feet back into a neutral stance. Just back into neutral. Feel the weight in the feet. See how you're supporting yourself. If you got a mirror, or if you can see yourself in your camera. Right? So I'm going to take my feet out a little bit wider than my shoulders, and with my feet out, I'm going to go back into a triangle. So I'm going to turn my left foot in, turn my right foot out. Back heel could be elevated if you didn't know. Reach out to the right, and just again with the pelvis, just think tailbones underneath you if that helps. Pubic bones lifting up, and then as you're going off to the side, you could grab your block. Really great with a chair, So you could post your elbow down if you really wanted to get more depth. Elbow is deeper than hand, right? I'm going to take the left arm up, and then as I take the left arm up, I'm going to turn the palm forward, and I'm going to take the arm overhead. And as I take it overhead, I'm trying to keep my ribs in. So we haven't done a plank yet, but just like plank, you're pulling the ribs in. So a couple deep breaths. And again, you could certainly get lower with the right hand. It's actually more effort in keeping yourself up, to be honest. You can bring the left arm up. You can come all the way up. So turn the right foot in and then turn the left foot out. And then just move the tailbone down just a bit. And again, if you find that incredibly irritating, maybe don't do as much of it. And some people don't necessarily need this. But like I said, a lot of times when people are standing, not really using their abdomen to support themselves, usually something's off in terms of alignment, like their head is more forward or their hips are more forward, and they're really just countering the balance, and then that's what's supporting their weight. So I'm gonna turn the palm forward, I'm gonna take it forward, and just if I was practicing on my own, I'd be holding it here. This angle is the best for me, but it could certainly be lower. If I'm doing a yoga ad or a video or something like that, that's what people want to see is, can you create great lines? But great lines don't always produce better practice. So take the right arm up and then bring yourself back up and then turn your left foot in and then just step your feet back to neutral. Just a couple deep breaths here. In and out. And we're going to do one more balancing pose just before we get down on the ground. I'm trying to limit less time on hands because I know some people as they get older, they can't be on their hands so much. So I'm going to be at the back of my mat, and then I'm going to step my left foot forward. Again, I'm lifting from the pubic bone. I'm going to bring my left foot forward, and then I'm tipping my body forward. And especially if you have back pain, see what's the best angle in terms of coming forward. sometimes coming even to this degree might be too much. So maybe you're here. This is still balancing. You could be just on the big toe. That'll factor into balancing, right? But I'm going to tip forward, and then as I tip forward, I'm gathering through the front of my body. I could be taking the arms back. I could be bringing the hands down. I'm going to focus more on having my left leg bent, just because most people don't have the flexibility to have the leg straight, which is perfectly fine. And it's almost viewed sometimes as incorrect. But if you want stronger legs, a bent knee position is definitely more building in the legs. And it might actually be better for your lower back. So bring yourself up and then bringing the right foot down. And just notice the difference between the feet. You feel a lot of integration and strength happening in the foot. Like you could pause and journal about it. All these things can give you more insight. So I'm going to step forward with my right foot. So as I step forward with my right foot, my left heel is lifting. And then again, I'm gathering. I may start with a bent knee. I did it on the other side with a straight leg. And to be honest, for me, because I have enough flexibility in my body, it's so much easier to do with my legs straight. But for you, in terms of your lower back, you may want to have your knee bent, and you may not want to be tipping forward so much. So you could be active in both feet, moving away from the back foot. And if you happen to go lower with the hands, that's obviously going to be more stressful for your posterior, your back. It's going to be a bigger stretch. So take one more breath here, and then push through the right foot, bring yourself back up, and then you're back to standing. So we're going to come down to all fours. So when you come down onto hands and knees, just have the hands turned out and just move the weight around a little bit. And then as you're moving the weight around in the hands and the wrists, it's much easier on the hands for most people. That's why I like starting here for people. And then for some people, for like plank, they may actually have to keep their hands like this as opposed to having the hands forward. You don't have problems with the hands, then you have the hands, forward. Right? But just as you're here, I'm going to turn my right foot or my right hand back towards my right knee. So I'm stretching out the forearm, the wrist. You can open and close the hand. Right? By opening and closing the hand, it's going to expose more of the forearm and the wrist. And then bringing the right hand back where you had it, and then bringing the left hand into more of a flexion. So or actually extension. So as I'm extending the musculature around the wrist, around the forearm. Then again, I could, it's really hard to close the hand, at least for me. But this is something that can help stretch out the hand more. And then bring the hands back to neutral and press through the hands and round through the shoulders, round your back. And look forward, look up into a back bend. So you can lift the chin, you can lift the chest, you can widen the thighs, and then you can exhale, you can round your back. So a full rounding of the spine. I like to keep the weight forward in the front of the hands because it's habitual that the weight's too far back. So back bend again, lift the chin, lift the chest, and then finish in a rounded position so you can round your back out. Come back to neutral, make a longer stance. Often when people do planks, their hands are too wide. So they're lacking strength typically. So a wider stance is kind of easier. It's definitely easier on the hands, and it's definitely easier on the upper body. So if you can, try to get your hands underneath your shoulders. Again, the hands don't have to be turned forward. If you want to stretch out the hands, the wrists more, having the hands more forward is really very similar to a handstand. It's not really that much different. It's not as much weight. So take a couple deep breaths here. Use your fingertips. If you're using quite a bit of effort here, I say this often, it's going to be difficult, like right away. If you're going for time, I wouldn't be, if someone wanted to see me do a 3-minute plank, I wouldn't be using effort the whole time to do that. And then you can bring the knees down. I don't recommend that at all. You can tuck the toes and then you can sit back towards the heels. If you want to build up some willpower and do something like that, that's good. But probably the next day your neck would feel like, wouldn't feel very good. Your shoulders possibly. There's other ways that you could build up better strength, right? So I'm untucking the toes, and then I'm going to sit back towards the feet. Often when I'm teaching people, they go beyond what they're actually really capable of doing, probably because of an insecurity. So you don't have to go super far to benefit. Just go far enough where you're manipulating, and you'll be much happier in your body, and you'll feel way better the next day. So come back into a neutral position, have the hands underneath the shoulders, round the shoulders, and then lift the knees. I'm talking more like someone that's much older or someone that's not as experienced, but it's good to obviously push your boundaries and do more. That's like a whole different topic. And then go back up into a down dog, and then in down dog, pedal the legs out. And I haven't really been focusing on the back of the body so much in the last 4 weeks or something like that, but it is beneficial to get the heels down. If you can work on that independently, and then as you're doing it independently, you'll feel more of a stretch throughout the leg, the back of the knees, and then just come forward into plank. And you might want to hold plank, but I'm going to go up into a down dog, and I will come forward and through into an up dog. So you can come forward and through. Straight arms is much easier than bent arm transition. So if you're just beginning, straight arms are good. And then you can go back up into down dog. You have stenosis in your back. Back bendings aren't really the best thing to use, right? Come forward, come through. You have herniation in your back, right? Back bending will help you more. Go back up into down dog. You have a combination of both, which this happens for people. You got to tread lightly, and you got to be really careful with what you're using. So come back down onto your knees, and then when you come back down onto your knees, just have the toes tucked and sit back onto the feet if you can. Now you could put blocks underneath you. Just good to get the toes more involved, stretch up the toes, which will help with your balance. That's what I'm focusing on more today. So bring the hands down, come up into plank if you can. If you can't, go up into down dog. So lift the knees, lift the thighs, press through the hands, round through the shoulders, and then pull back up into a down dog. So pull all the way back up into a down dog. Think I'm pulling on your arms, and you're pulling back through your thighs and through your hips. So a couple deep breaths here. Breathe in, breathe out. And then bend the knees and walk. Actually, if you walk your feet forward a little bit, and just walk your hands back towards your feet so that you're in a standing forward fold. So there's benefits in walking back. I sometimes teach that to people. It's easier to come forward the way that I did. And just with your pelvis, you want to be, it varies, right? But I'm sticking my butt out, and then you can obviously see or feel if that's actually good for you. And then you could also be more passive. Like rounded positions can be very, very beneficial for people. So just, again, it always depends. So take the hands to the left side. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on a forward bend, but I'm spending a little bit of time here. And then taking the hands to the right. And your body often will tell you what is good or what is not. But when you're always being told what not to do, it really interferes with your decision making, right? Bring the hands back in the middle. So you can roll yourself up. And then as you roll yourself up to standing, I'm just going to focus on my pelvis here. So my pelvis, I'm trying to move my tailbone down and my pubic bone up just to get a little bit more neutral. And then in more of a neutral spine, just going to look over my right shoulder. And then looking over my left. And then looking back to center. And then just, more neutral here. So I'm just going to stretch out your feet a little bit more. So I'm tucking all of my toes underneath. So my 4 toes are underneath me, and I'm just on the big toe. So this can be really difficult for people to get all the toes underneath them like this. So what you could do is you could put a block up against the wall and push the 4 toes into there. And how much pressure you need is, again, it depends. And then undo that, and then go over to the right side, and then just tuck the toes of the right foot underneath you. And you might not get all the toes underneath. It's okay. You know, and doing any kind of technique is never life depending. Like, you know, if you don't do this, life will go on, you know, and it's okay that it doesn't happen this way, but as you practice more, you'll certainly develop more abilities throughout your body and your mind. So undo that on the right side, and then just tuck the left big toe underneath you. So just the left big toe is being tucked underneath. And by, you know, the toe stands that I did previously might be way too much for you. So this is easier. And this could even be done sitting, you know. It's too much weight or you can't balance for whatever reason. You could do it in a chair. Then untuck that and then bring the big toe underneath on the right side. And you may feel like some restrictions in the joints. Like, you know, they just might not bend. But as you apply the right kind of pressure, you can start to see that you'll have better flexion of the toes, which will help with extending the toes, having the toes straight. And then go back into untucking the toes. And we're going to go back into some single leg stuff, more for your hips. So I'm going to take my left leg up, and so if these static things, positions that we did earlier, are difficult for you, or they're just better for you, you know that, than moving, stick with that, right? But I'm going to circle my left leg out in a circular motion. Just going to do 3, nothing extensive. But when I do stuff like this, I really do it for a long time. And it's never about the time, it's really about the practice. So bring the left foot down, then take the right leg up, and think of adding a big circle throughout the leg. So I'm taking it up into a greater range of motion if I can, and try not to lean back as you do this. So I'm taking it out and bringing it down. I'm going to circle in. So I'm taking the left leg out to the left. So just turn the left foot out to start, and then bring it up towards the shoulder and then back in. So I'm turning the left foot out. Really good for your knees. So when you pivot and you turn, how well does your leg turn with it? How well does your hip turn? And that can, you know, dramatically affect your knee. So take it up, root through the right foot, and then bringing the left foot down. And then I'm going to take the right leg up. So I'm turning the right foot out initially. I'm taking the right leg up in space. I'm bringing it forward in space. And then I'm turning it out again and up. And I love static positions. I love classical yoga. But if you're lacking strength in the hips, it'll affect you. So I think these are really important. And as you age more, the more benefit, or the more beneficial it will be. But great for like recovery stuff. So I'm going to take my balance through my right foot. I'm going to take the left heel up onto the ankle or the heel, and then I will slide the foot up. And when you take your leg up, I think what's really important is to see what's stopping from taking the leg up higher. So just give it some thought, feel it out, and then if it is something that really presents itself, then it's very easy to help you with that. So I'm pushing through my right foot. Again, I'm trying to not, I'm a person that really just kind of sways when I'm tired. So my tailbone is down. Yours does not have to be. I'm going to take the arms up to the sides of me, opening up through the shoulders, and then I'm going to be taking the arms up overhead. And it's okay, you know, often people come out, you know, they fall out for whatever reason. That's not bad. You know, that's, as long as you're practicing your balance, you'll get better, right? You can take the arms out wide and down. You can bring the left knee forward and down, and you can bring the right foot up. So I made a post on Instagram and Facebook about balance. You know, something I think is highly, highly valuable to practice at least a few times a week, you know? And if your balance gets so good in positions, it's better to make it more complex, you know? You don't ever want to be like, not that it's bad to say that you're good at something, right? There's nothing wrong with that, right? But if you made it a little bit more complex, you get stronger from that. And that's, you know, another way to develop, you know, better practice. So take a couple deep breaths here. Breathe in, breathe out. Again, tailbone's down, pubis is up, ribs are in. And you can take the arms out to the sides, and the arms come back down, and the right knee comes forward, and it comes down. And then just come down onto your hands and your knees. So when you come down onto your hands and your knees, I'm going to have my hips sit back onto my feet. So you could put a blanket underneath you. You could have like a small pillow. This is really good for your QL. So I'm going to have my feet, I'm going to sit on my feet. So I'm sitting in what we call as Virasana in martial arts. It's called Seiza. So you could take your hips to your right, and then my feet are off to the left. So I'm just getting all this isolation into the outside of my right hip, which these are really dense, strong muscles. So you may have to be further off to the side. Like I'm kind of off to the side here, which is good. But as it gets easier for you, not that this is the be all, but there's just more stress to it if I'm sitting more over my pelvis with my head and with my shoulders. So I'm going to bring it back up, and then I'm going to shift over to my left side, and then as I'm off to the left, it's targeting more the outside of my hip and my lower back. Again, you could be off to the side. You don't have to be completely upright. If you couldn't do this with your knees, there's other ways to expose the outer region of your pelvis. But this is a good way if it's healthy for you. Like anything, you know, you got to use it in the context of, is it good for you, right? So take a couple deep breaths, breathe in, breathe out. And then you can come off of that. I'm going to have my legs up. I'm going to be on my hands into more of like a tabletop position. But just go into retracting the shoulders. Just draw the shoulders back, and then just let that relax. And then draw the shoulders back. You know, move your shoulders back in space. Push through your hands. And then just let that go. And then last time, pull back. And then as you pull back, you can keep this, right? Some of you can't come up. Just keep this, and that'll help with your shoulders. You're strengthening your back. Not a lot of pulling in yoga. And this is like the beginning of, you know, pulling yourself, you know, depending on, you know, what type of pulling you do, right? So push through the feet, lift through the pelvis, and then as you lift through the pelvis, continue to pull the shoulders back. Side to side is much easier than forward and back. So it's good to move side to side, but again, like anything, you might not want to move, right? But I'm going to move forward, keeping the pelvis up, keeping the shoulders back. I'm going to move back in space, move forward, hips up, shoulders back, and then back to neutral. And then one last time, I'm going to pull it back, right, shoulders back, hips up. Really, really good at strengthening the glutes, the hamstrings. And then bring it back into neutral and bring your hips down and wrap your arms around your legs and push your knees out into your arms. So just get yourself to be nice and tall, nice and upright. Getting yourself up into an upright position. And then just look over the right shoulder. Look over the left. And then just look center. If you can, bring the head down. Let the head drop down towards the chest. Stretch out the back of the neck. And then you can lift the head up. And then as you lift the head up, I'm going to have my legs out to the sides. And I'm going to practice this a few times because usually when I see people taking their legs out, just have your legs straight forward and have your knees bent. And this is a good position that's not really taught often anymore. It's a Dandasana position in yoga. So knees can be bent. It's a great, position in working on strengthening the pelvic floor, that type of practice. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to take the legs out a little bit wider, just for a few seconds, and then I'm going to bring the legs back in. So I'm going to take them out, which is strengthening the outsides of your hips, and then bringing them back in. It's good to do in socks. I'm on a hardwood floor, so it's easy for me to slide my feet. So I'm pushing through my hands. You don't have to, right? But if the weight's in my legs, and even just posture will kind of determine how you can move your legs in space. So push through the hands, push the legs out, and then group the legs back in and bring the feet together. So feet are together, knees are wide, and with the feet together, you may want to sit on a higher surface. And like anything that when I'm teaching people more individually is, some positions they do X, something with their hips, and I'll teach them something different. And then say when they're standing, I may teach something different as well because they're different positions. So push the feet together, push the thighs apart, just for a few breaths here. And then lower the hips. And as you lower the hips, you could just kind of stay in Baddha Konasana, which is a great position. And like anything, if I was just only working on Baddha Konasana, I'd take my legs up when I need it, but then I could take my legs out. Great to do Baddha Konasana up against the wall. But I'm going to go back to taking the legs forward. And then I'm going to try to take the legs out a little bit wider. Just working more on your pelvis. But eventually this will be side bending. You can do side bends from this position. If you have better than average flexibility, you can do that. But I'm kind of combining the two. I'm going to do it in a seated position, which I find much easier for people. So bring the legs back in and come into a cross-legged position, just an easy cross-legged position. And as your legs are crossed, just move the ribs just a bit side to side, like glide the hip or the rib cage. So as you're gliding your ribs laterally, you might feel like some more tension on one side. These are super subtle, and if you haven't really done them anymore or haven't done them at all, right, it builds up a really great heat in the body, like really good for circulation. So come back into the middle, and I'm going to take the left hand out to the left and reaching the right arm out to the right, and just play around with being higher. Because often, like I said about being insecure, is people just try to get low. And then they don't really build up an awareness of where they actually should be. They're just trying to get it right. And by getting it right in someone's standards might actually be wrong for you. So you could let the head relax down and lean forward in space if that's better for you. Be in the middle or be back. And, just kind of see what actually is helping you, mobilize the tissues. And then you could bring yourself back up and then recross the legs. As you recross the legs, take the right arm out to the right side. The left arm is out to the left. And then as it's out to the left, right, decide if you want to be leaning forward or if you want to be leaning back, right? And then as I'm here, right, I'm just, again, focusing around more of the QL. So the left arm could be reaching out to the left and the head could hang down. Take 3 deep breaths. You can open and close the hand. You can see that I'm low. You could come down low too, right? And it could be just for a couple seconds and then go back. It could be not a motion, right? But you're moving in and out of the pose, which eventually will build up more time in a further range of motion. And then bringing yourself back up. So take the legs forward again. We're just going to practice sitting one last time. So I'm going to use a block. I find this really helpful for people sitting on the floor. I mean, it's great to sit on blankets and bolsters and whatnot, but just take your legs forward. Take the legs out into a wider position, and it doesn't have to be as wide as it can go, right? Just somewhat out, I think, is a good place to start. But put the block forward into your pelvis and move forward from your pubic bone. So move your pubic bone forward towards the block, and then as you move it forward in space, right, it's going to actually put more stress on the inner thighs and the hips. I can see people on the round and, for whatever reason, they might be able to get down low. Some people might not be able to get down at all. A lot of it is based on articulating the pelvis. So if you can move the pelvis forward into the block, you'll feel more of a tipping, and it comes a little bit into hip flexion. So what you can do is when you're up, is try to lift the legs up away from the floor. Like lift them, not that they're coming up, but actively lift the legs up, and you'll start to see that can help you bring yourself more forward or to the sides, right? But, all the angles have their place when we need them. So what you'll do is you'll take the legs in, and as I take my legs in, I'm going to take just so that you have a better angle. So I'm going to have my knees bent, and then I'm going to take my right foot outside of my left hip, and then I'm stepping my left foot over my right knee. Now this can be a lot for people. So the bottom leg could be straight, right? It doesn't have to be a double fold. But I'm taking my right arm around. I'm not twisting. I'm twisting a bit, right? There's some rotation. But what I'm doing is I'm getting my right shoulder, and it doesn't have to be really low. So just start out high, and you can feel all this great effects in your back and in the outside of your hip. And you might be like, wow, that's a lot, right? But then over time, you can get lower as it gets easier. But I'm just using it as an example. Not that you, again, have to get lower, but these are really, really, really dense muscles. They get really strong. They get almost that they get weak. They feet turn out because you might have that type of practice, but often people, they get tight, and that's what turns feet out, and that's a really common thing in people. So I'm just getting my right shoulder to be lower. I'm taking 2 more breaths here. You could creatively support your head with your hand into your jaw, right? And then you can bring yourself back up, and then I'm going to undo the legs, and then taking the left foot outside of the right hip, and then the left foot steps over. But it's easier to just hold with your right hand. That's a good starting point. And then it's eventually the left arm comes around, and then I'm going to start high just so that you have a good starting place. And then it's, you could certainly be twisting, right? That's part of this type of position. But what I'm doing today is I'm just getting my left shoulder to be lower when the time is right. And again, it's just, I'm not doing my yoga these days for greater aesthetics. It's been a long time since I've done that. I'm using my yoga to, improve the quality of my life, and the aesthetics will come as you get stronger and you get healthier in practice. Your aesthetics should get better. They might not come as fast as someone that's just working, like just better lines, but I think you'll be much happier in the end and healthier in the end, and that's, I think, a better approach. That's, why I practice the way that I do. So you can, again, target the outside of the hip, and then bringing yourself back up. And then when you come back up, just have a yoga block with you. And then we're going to come onto your back. As you come onto your back, have the feet underneath the knees, have the hands over the elbows, and press through the floor with your feet, and just lifting the pelvis, just getting the shoulders back. I've said this before in videos, a good bridge will help support eventually a plow. And in terms of like depth, plow is a great place to start. And then, it could be more extended back bending. But again, depending on your spinal history, right? Maybe you're not doing those types of poses, which, again, that they have their place. So lift through the pelvis, lift through the lower back, extend through the spine. And even if you are more neutral, that's beneficial for the legs and beneficial for the hips, right? But slowly bring your upper back into the floor, your mid back, and your low back, and you can just be neutral. So just take 3 deep breaths here. Breathe in, breathe out. And then I'm going to go up again. I'm going to lift through the pelvis, lifting through the lower back, lifting through the mid back, lifting in the higher facets closer to my neck. So just getting more of a lift, pushing through the heels. Just feel if the knees fall in. There's nothing wrong with that, but if it's something that a habitual thing, you could put blocks on the insides of the shins to stop that. You could put a strap around your legs to push out. Weak adductors is a big reason why the knees fall in. So you can bring your upper back into the floor, your mid back, your low back, and then we're just down, just an easy position. But take your right leg into your chest, and as you bring it in, cross your right leg over your left. And then as you cross it over, I'm going to have my left hand support my knee. Could be a block, right? You can put the block underneath the thigh if you don't want to use your hand. But I'm going to take my right arm over my right shoulder. But on a diagonal, I'm going to bring the arm, at a 45-degree angle to the floor. And then I'm going to take it up. So initially, just start out slow. Your arm could be on a second block, right? Because the reality is you might not be able to get the arm down. And often people will bend the elbow to get the hand down. And then you're kind of missing the point of improving your abilities in twisting. So I'm bringing the right arm out on a diagonal to the right, and then I'm bringing it up. And I'm doing these pretty slow, just so that you can comprehend them and you can kind of see. But this is often the most difficult angle in twisting. Not out to the side, not overhead. It's on this angle that will help you in, rotating. And then bring the right arm up, and then you could take the body up, and then you could bring the left leg over the right. So just bringing it in, this could be the position. You can cross it over, and then I'm supporting the block with the knee, but it could be your opposing hand. But just in having the support, right, you want to keep that down. That's what's important. So you want to have a good foundation. And then I'm taking my left arm over my left shoulder, and then I'm going to reach on a diagonal to the left and then up. And say it's like really, really difficult for you on one side, and this shouldn't, make your life any more stressful, but you might have some scoliosis, and that can affect the shoulders dramatically. If you have an S scoliosis, you'll feel it more, right? In terms of how you move your arms. So taking the left arm up, and then one more time, bring it out to the side. So the hand is down. You can look over your left shoulder, and then bringing it back up. And then I'm gonna roll back onto my back. And again, static positions have its place. Like if you have sandbags and stuff like that, that's a great way of manipulating the body. You could load yourself up with sandbags and twist. But that motion, most people will need more leverage to go further. Like I could show you a really good forward bend, but ultimately that's not going to give you the splits. You have to put yourself in like the splits in order to do the splits. So I'm happy if you just rest here on your back. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll over to my left side, and then I'm going to sit myself back up. But I'm happy if you're on your back. I'm happy that you're resting. I'm so happy that you could join me today. I hope these classes are helping you in some capacity. And if you can't afford giving me a donation, just keep taking the classes. How you could help me is you could let people know of my services, give them my information, and then that'll help support me supporting more people. And all my information's on my website in terms of schedule, in terms of how you could donate. But you could also message me, whether I know you or not. I'd love to get, I love the fact that I can teach more people online. Obviously, I'd love to meet you and work with you personally. But until that day comes, I'm glad that I can support you online. So have a beautiful weekend. If I don't see you tomorrow in class tomorrow, I have a class 10 a.m. to 11 on Zoom. So if you can join me in class, great. If not, hope to see you soon. Take care of yourself. Namaste.